All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are going to be talking about the Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age that just came out on the Switch. We both picked it up, so we're going to be giving our thoughts on that. Not really RPG related, but gaming news related. The Sonic movie, we couldn't help but bring it up. We have to talk about this.
Of course.
And then Eric's real excited, and this is kind of getting me excited too, on the update to the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. So we want to talk about that. And also, there's been some mounting Dragon Age 4 / Anthem news / live services edition. I don't know. We really want to get into it and kind of touch it from a macro sense. And we're excited to get into that. Then we have a question from one of our listeners, Joker, who says, these days, if you have a choice between a Western RPG and a JRPG, which one will you go for with surety to get more enjoyment out of? And which one will you wait for a price drop? So we want to address that. We do have some other questions on our Discord server, which we're going to get to in the upcoming weeks. If you do have a question, feel free to go to our description, click on the Discord join link, or leave a question in the comments, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. Without further ado, Eric, Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age.
I take it that's what you've been playing this week too?
Yep.
Yep, then we can just get right on to it. I'm sorry, I'm posting the
link.
The links.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Why don't you go first? What do you think about it?
So this is one of those games that I own on like a multiple different platforms. You know, I own the PS2 version, I own it on PS4, I own it on PC, and now I own it on Switch. So I think the only system that I haven't gotten this game on that it's available for is the Xbox. So with that aside, I think this is a really good version to play the Zodiac Age on, if that's the version you want to play. I mean, especially having the ability to play this in portable mode is pretty freaking awesome. And it looks really good. You can clearly tell that graphically it's a little more smudgy, a little more distorted in handheld mode than it is on my television. But, you know, it looks really, really good. I do have some reservations with the Zodiac Age version of Final Fantasy XII because it isn't really the original. But, you know, I can save that here and just kind of push over to you and get see what you think about the game first before I get into that.
I think it's great. It is essentially the Zodiac Age that we got on PS4.
Mm-hmm.
And to a lesser extent, the PC. Because I know the PC version has a couple features. Like, they went ahead and gave you a couple modes ahead of time.
Yeah, you got the hard mode for one ahead of time. You don't have to beat the game. Get New Game Plus.
Not so much a hard mode, but a hard mode in the sense that you are limited, like level 1, and you have to use the license board efficiently, that type of deal.
Sure.
And then the PC version also offered the max skill, max LP modes on there. But the Switch version doesn't have those. I think they went and ported this from the PS4 to the Switch, and the Xbox One version apparently doesn't have those PC features either. So we are pretty much going to those, which half of I'm okay with, half I'm not. They should have added the difficulty modes at the beginning like we've complained about in the past. But I'm glad they removed the Gil and LP thing. I mean, the grinding isn't that bad in this game, especially since you have 4X mode, and the game's a lot easier than it used to be. I think this is a great version. Like you said, it looks great.
Yeah.
First of all, even on the Switch, I noticed that the same exact thing you did. It looks a tad smudgier. That's even a word.
You all know what we mean. Yeah.
Yeah, but it still looks really good. I enjoy playing it in handheld mode. I enjoy, just like before I go to bed, take the thing off the dock and just play it portable before I go to sleep. Especially to a soundtrack as great as that. Oh, and before I forget, this this is a feature in the PC version, but I'm so glad they added it in the Switch version, is the ability of 3 different types of soundtracks. You can have the PS2 version,
Yeah.
which is what you got, the compressed version of the tracks. And then you got OST, which is the tracks uncompressed and like
Is
in the
that what it
form they
is?
were originally.
Oh, okay. Because I was trying to like switch to that, but I didn't notice an immediate difference. So I just thought like they messed up. I don't know. I didn't leave it on there for very long, only like 5 or 10 seconds.
Yeah, it
Uh,
sounds a lot cleaner than the
mhm.
PS2 version. So it's basically like if you bought the soundtrack
Oh,
and you were
okay.
listening to it.
I was wondering if it was something like that. Maybe the reason I didn't notice the difference was because I was using my headphones and the portable version when I tried it out. So
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the orchestrated version. Usually, I don't prefer the updated version of these soundtracks, but for Final Fantasy 12, I think that having that like orchestrated version really fits it well. It sounds really, really good. Which version did you prefer?
I'm going with OST, especially since I've heard the whole
I
remastered
gotcha.
already. There's tracks I really like in the remaster, but then there's some which I felt a little indifferent towards. I'm like, whoa, the original one I liked a lot more.
Yeah.
But the I said on the OST because that's just the one I remember,
Mhm.
and it just gets me in that good mood.
Yeah.
The original Sakamoto tracks.
Yeah, I mean, just like the themes out in the Esther Sand and stuff like that, I feel like it just really is very fitting for an orchestra. But you can tell certain tracks they do take certain liberties, which are not the direction I would have gone with getting the ability to kind of rearrange things a little bit. So I can appreciate that.
And one other thing I know that got changed in the PC, not PC, Switch and Xbox One version
Hmm.
is that we can reset the jobs now.
Yeah,
Before you couldn't, but now you can. So if you made a mistake and you're like, oh, wait, this job combination actually doesn't work well, or you don't want a character to be a certain job anymore, you can go back to Moplank and Rabanester
yeah,
and he'll reset it for you for free and he'll refund all the LP back.
I
And you
really
can do
like
it
that.
as many times as you want.
Yeah, that actually is an awesome feature that I feel should have been in the initial release on the PS4, and I hope it does come to that version and the PC version. But having the ability to switch between jobs and really kind of test out a job and see what works best for you and your play style, I think is a really good feature. I mean, I actually had a blast just kind of switching between various jobs, going out there, grinding a little bit, seeing how I like it. No, I don't really like this. Let me go back and switch it to something else. I like that. It's kind of a pain that you have to go to Mog, but I guess it kind of limits the amount of times you can do it until later in the game, so you can actually get a hand on certain jobs, so that way you're not switching constantly. But I like it. It's a good version to play with. It's a good feature to have. So um,
Yeah.
I go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, just saying that like it is still easier and it's easier than ever now because you have those options to change
Yeah,
stuff around so you can really make things work in your favor. Now I will say that doesn't account for endgame. Endgame still has its challenges,
sure,
which will require you having a good knowledge of the systems. But playing through the main game is very simple, to the point. You actually mentioned this to me early this week, and I 100% agree with you. Is there is little motivation to use the gambits comparatively. Like
hmm
I have my healer on like gambits to set like immediately get rid of a certain status effects and heal under certain conditions, but I've not had to go beyond that. I set a few techniques to certain characters, but I've not had to change the gambit system over in boss battles to turn the tides in my favor. I rarely have to do that through the main
yeah.
story.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about the original was that this battle system felt very, very unique to other games that I had played at the time because, you could create these intricate gambit setups, and a lot of times that would make or break a battle is just how well you formulated, a battle for a boss. And like you said, like, okay, yeah, if you get to some of the end game bosses, those are going to be challenging regardless, even if they did reduce some of the HP off those a little bit, but they're still going to be really, really challenging. But yeah, I mean, through the first half of the game is just, there's no comparison. I'm actually going to pull up a little window here that kind of, we'll briefly touch this, but it's going to show basically what we're talking about here to people that have not picked up the Zodiac Age. So essentially, first off, let me see if I can pull this up. I don't know if you all can see this, but right now I have on the screen an example of something from the Zodiac Age, the license board for one of the jobs. But I actually saved from another website. It has all the like license board points or whatever, license board squares from the original, and we're not going to go through all those because that's it's several hundred there. But specifically on that, there are 5 license board points on there, or squares, for the entire board, and collectively it equals 1000 HP, right? And I think before in Discord I thought there was like 400 in total, but now that I'm looking at it, it's actually more like 300, so I was a little off with that. But there's 1000 HP in total you can get on the entire board in the original. And if you go back here to the Zodiac Age for some of these jobs, and you get 2 jobs in this version. For example, here's Foe Breaker, which is probably the most obscene one. I mean, you start right off here at where it says Battle Command, and right away you see HP 30, 70, 110, 150, 190, 230, 270, 350, 310. And then on the other side, you have 390. You have another one here somewhere. But anyways, it equals an extra 2,100 HP. Same thing for the Knight. Is just, the Knight's ridiculous. Right here, you start Battle Command. Right off the gate, you have a 70, 110, 190, 30, 150, a 230. I mean, in the original, there was 5 HP upgrades, and it took you a long time to find most of them. I think they give you like one pretty close, but outside of that, it was more like a bonus. I mean, even if you go to something like Black Mage, you're going to have to wait a little longer to get some of these HP upgrades. But I mean, you still got a 390, a 70, a 270, I mean, 230, a 190, a 310. I mean, and it still equals like 1600 HP. And you got to think too that this is only about 100 squares, so you're getting to these HP upgrades a lot faster than the original. And then you get a second job on top of that. So even if you did choose Black Mage, which 1600 HP versus 1000 HP of the original, you're going to get another job on top of that, and it's just going to, you have so much HP that it comes down to the point where, it's not really that important to an extent what you put for your gambit setup. Because I mean, when you have 6,000 HP, I mean, and the boss is doing 300 damage, you can be a little freer with your gambit setup and be a little simpler. So that is a frustration for me. Go ahead.
I'm okay with the game being here, but the problem is it went from, like, you could say that like the original 12 was hard mode and they just bumped it down to very, very easy mode. It's right when you start getting into the meat of the license board is when everything just like you just get all these upgrades right from the beginning. You can get a ton of battle potency upgrades, magic potency upgrades. Like you said with the Foe Breaker, you can just go straight down that line and just start being a powerhouse and like a tank on top of that. It's which would be okay if they didn't feel the need to ease up the enemies also on top of it. I mean, the game would have fixed itself if you didn't mess with the enemies and you did that. It's like, okay, it's easier now, but the difficulty of the monsters are still the same. You still got to be on your toes, that type of deal. But that's not even really the case anymore. I remember Bellius being hard.
Yeah.
And my characters just wiped the floor with him. No problem at all. Like, I did one gambit set to get handkerchiefs out
Hmm.
when he does oil. I mean, they all do that. I purchased plenty because I kill enemies so quickly because I use like 2x or 4x mode if I want to get some gil and stuff like that. And I remember the gil exploits in this game. Not exploits as much as I just know how to chain the right mobs from my previous experiences. But God, the main story is so easy. But I mean, veterans of the game will probably get the most enjoyment out of the in-game content, which when I tried some of it in the PS4 version, it was still offering a fair challenge.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's the biggest thing is that they rebalanced the game to be a little bit easier. And it feels like to me is that even though there is that challenge later in the game, like they kind of rebalanced it. And I don't want to say a lazy way because usually they don't do this much altering with these remasters. But it sounds like, they had so many different jobs that you could choose from. They balanced it towards like, well, what if everybody picked, a whole team of time mage and white mages? You don't want the game to be too hard, right? So it seems like they balanced it for like the weakest possible setup. And then if you choose anything at all, like if you have any knights on your party or you have a foe breaker on your party, like you're just going to wreck it. And the idea that, once you choose a second job on top of that, it's just absurdly easy until you get towards the end of the game. So that is a little bit baffling. I mean, on top of that too, I think another area they kind of messed up with the balancing was, they created these license boards for these specific jobs, and there's less license board squares than the original huge license board, and they wanted to last a significant portion of the game, but they didn't want to have to like recreate or create brand new animations for all these jobs because that would just take too much time and money, and they would almost have to create a whole another layer to the game to have like all these new spells for the black mage, and that would make you be able to last the entire game with a license board like that. It feels like to me they just padded it with things that will not require animation. So things like MP upgrades, HP upgrades, stat upgrades. And in the original, when you got these upgrades, they were more like a bonus, like woo, but it wasn't required. So in addition to these upgrades, you're leveling up, and so that's why we're kind of talking about at the beginning. Why it was kind of disappointing that the game doesn't offer the hard mode, which at least doesn't let you level up. You just get all these HP upgrades, but you're not leveling up your character and getting all this extra HP on top of that from leveling up. So and they did other things like they altered the treasure chest respawn rate. So before it was you had to move 3 screens away before the treasure chest would respawn. Well, now it's only 1 screen. So, I mean, even very early in the game, I looked at my inventory. I had not bought a single potion. And, I was only a few hours in the game, and I had like 45 potions just from like all these treasure chests of just constantly just giving me all this free stuff. So, I mean, if you want to play the game for story mode, kind of breeze through that way, I think this is a very good route to go. And, it can be a little fun if you want to try to challenge yourself, maybe restrict yourself to one job, or maybe come up with a purely magic-based team. And that might be kind of interesting, kind of get that challenge that way. Or just plow through the game, get the hard mode, and then that way you can kind of enjoy the game in a new way, live and die by the license board, or maybe do some of the bonus content like the trial mode, which I haven't really messed with too much. But Eric, I think you were telling me, at least on the PS4 version, you gave the trial mode a good run through, right?
And reach the top.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's pretty difficult to get through the whole thing. So I think that's kind of why they put that on there for some of the veteran players like you and me that played the original and enjoyed it. We can go back and play the trial mode, which is essentially a series of battles where you have to change your gambit setup to be able to get through it. So it's not like you can just leave it on a basic gambit setup to get through the game. So it's kind of frustrating to me because I enjoyed the original so much not to have the ability to play that game. We still haven't gotten that game remastered. But, I mean, if you want to revisit the story, it looks great. Gives you all this different music options. You can play the game with the Japanese audio, which is kind of a trip to play it like that. Although I do really like the voice acting in 12. So I really don't prefer the Japanese one in this one, even though the lip sync is a little bit better with the Japanese audio, I've noticed.
But yeah,
But
the voice acting in this game's incredible. In
yeah,
my opinion, I wouldn't change it ever. I mean, I rarely ever change from English dub, anyways. So, um, yeah, it's still as good as ever. The game, in my opinion, if you've never gotten the Zodiac Age before, the Switch is a great version to have. If you're someone who already owns the PS4 version or the PC version, you kind of just have to weigh with yourself: is the extra features and the portability worth getting again? Because it still is $50. I'm sure there'll probably be some sale in the future for it, but the biggest things you will get is the ability to reset your jobs, 3 versions of the soundtrack, which is already in the PC version, but not the PS4, and some little other quality of life features, but the difference between the 2 versions isn't that grand. So if you already own the game, unless those small features entice you to play it again, you don't need to get it.
yeah.
But
So
it's still a great version.
I mean, yeah, and I mean they did do some other cool things, like they removed the damage limit from 9,999. Quickenings no longer require MP. So some small like quality of life updates like that, and kind of just letting you kind of play the game the way you want to play it, except with the hard mode, I guess I should say. So I mean, it's not a bad way to play the game. It's just different. That's all I can say. So, do you have anything else you want to say about the Zodiac Age on the Switch?
No, but I could go for some of that coffee that is on Daenerys' table. I haven't gotten that far in Game of Thrones, but I did see a picture of that. I'm on season 4, episode 2. Me and my fiance are going through that
Mm.
right now, so we've been enjoying it. I saw the end of season 3. Mm.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. Yeah.
That was an intense episode. I won't spoil it. I don't think that's something I could ever spoil.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been enjoying Game of Thrones so far. Short review. There you
And if anyone has been caught up with Game of Thrones, on our Discord, we have a channel for Game of Thrones, but it's completely up to date. Like, so if you go in there, like we're talking season 8, episode 4, we're going to be discussing the most up to date episodes. Not anything like official, just like you can go in there and spoiler talk if you want. So there's that option if you want to come check it out on our
If
Discord.
you guys got anything bad to say about me, just say it in the Game of Thrones section, because I'm not going to click it till I'm up to date on that.
He'll see it like 3 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so Zodiac Age. Yep. Zodiac Age. Worth the shot on the Switch. I like it. I think it is a definitive edition for the most part, except the PC version does let you play the hard mode from the beginning. So it's kind of a toss up. Do you want to be able to switch your jobs, or do you want to be able to play the hard mode from the beginning? I don't know which way to go. Obviously, there's a speed up feature. So, you got to pick or choose. I think I'd lean the Switch route just because I can play that in bed. And, it's I can play it on my break at work or, whatever. There's options, variety there. So I don't know. You got to pick and choose what features you want, I guess. For some reason, they can't give us all the features in one version, which is annoying, but I'm sure we'll get there. Moving on, though. This is a non-RPG topic, but it was too tempting not to talk about. The Sonic the Hedgehog
Go fast. Come on.
movie. This thing is preposterous, Eric. How do you feel about this thing?
Oh man, wow, that is the stuff of nightmares. That's like if you played a game of Sonic and just like watch any awful '80s monster movie, and then you just fell asleep and had a dream. That's like, that's what you would see. The design for Sonic just looks so ridiculously god awful. It's speechless. I can't put it into words how bad it looks. I mean, I expected this movie to be bad, but what I was thinking to myself, is this going to be so bad and cringy that it can't be watched, or will it be bad? It's so bad that it's hilarious type of deal? Because we can all agree it's probably not going to be good. But wow, they took it to an astronomical level. I couldn't help but laugh my ass off when I saw the trailer. I was like, he has human legs, these Nike shoes, these realistic looking human hands.
Yeah.
And human teeth. And like he had like all this realistic looking fur. And I was like, wow, if 1993's Super Mario Bros. Didn't teach you that Hollywood doesn't know anything about integrating video games and movies, then let's let 2019's Sonic the Hedgehog movie remind you.
Yeah, you know, like there's so many just negative comments about this design online, and it's I've seen this said in multiple places, but you gotta think like they kind of knew this was coming. I mean, clearly the model, like you said, has human proportions, which just does not look right. It looks like somebody is wearing a Halloween costume with like a mask on, kind of like you'd have somebody at like a sports event running around and like selling you hot dogs. This doesn't look like the Sonic that people grew up with, and this is actually a point I heard from Jim Sterling, which I thought was a very good point. You know, if you're going to pay for the licensing of a iconic image or character, because you're paying, that implies that that image or character has value because you have to pay for it. So why would you go out of your way to change something that you bought? And I thought that was such a good way to phrase that, because clearly, like, people are drawn to the Sonic look, or the character, or the design of the original Sonic, and to make it so like to have human proportions like this, and just kind of like almost like not very cartoony at all, and just like far too realistic, but like not realistic at the same time. It just looks strange, and you know, this is actually sparked the director of the movie to come out and say they're going to change it. And there's been some speculation with how much they can change in the 6 months before this movie's supposed to come out. But you can kind of see online some people have been kind of recreating certain images from the trailer, like how they would want the game to look, or not the game, the movie to look. And you know, every image I've seen where somebody has redesigned this has just looked way better, but I just don't know how much they can honestly change in the next 6 months, because that just sounds very, very expensive to me, very time consuming. I feel like the movie's basically just about filmed by now, you know?
You gotta commend them though. They immediately came out and said, okay, you don't like it, we hear you, we'll do something about it. We'll make it look better.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, movie directors and producers are going to come out and say, because it's way too late in the production, like, you know, the movie is most of the time is made and done a few months before the actual movie comes out. And a lot of times they just say, well, you don't like it, guess what? Deal with it. And that's that. And the director goes away. This is a director that came in and said, whoa, we totally understand the criticism you're all giving. Give us 6 months. We'll do something to make this look better.
Yeah.
And I have to give him mad props for that. But I do wonder, like you said, how much can you do in months? And like, how much can you really change? It's like everything is so wrong about that model that, like,
I'm trying to think, like, if you could only make some minor changes, like what I would change. And I feel like I can't decide, like, there's lots of things I have a problem with the model, but I can't decide whether it's if I had to put like the most annoying thing about it is either probably the eyes or the human proportion. And I feel like it's more likely they could fix the eyes than the proportions of the model, because they can't have like a model, a CGI model, be shorter, right? Because they've already done all this acting and everything with it. Like, I just feel like that would require too much work to try to make it work. But I just don't think changing the eyes will be enough. I gotta think they have to change, this ridiculous like body that this Sonic the Hedgehog character has in this movie. It just doesn't look right.
I still think the only way you could ever really fix it is to give him back his modern Sonic look.
Yeah.
It's
I see Doom McGuy saying, and I think it's a good point, just delay the movie and fix it completely. I wish, I mean, that would be, they could do that. And that, I think, I don't know. They got to look at it though, like, because aside from fixing the Sonic like model, watching the trailer of this movie, ignoring the Sonic like CGI model aside, it just doesn't look like a very good movie. I mean, Jim Carrey, I have no idea why Jim Carrey is in this movie. I mean, he's
a very animated fellow, and Dr. Robotnik himself is a very animated fellow, so it can work out. He doesn't have the body proportions, but I can give a little leeway for Jim Carrey. But the thing with this movie is it's a recreation of the movie Hop. It's like Smurfs. It's like, let's take these animated characters and put them in the real world and let crazy antics ensue.
Yeah, but like the thing, okay, so like I'm just baffled by the Jim Carrey deal, because like if you're going for realism, right? Like, and you're going to make Jim Carrey look like Robotnik, but you're not going to make him look completely like Robotnik, then why would you keep the goofy mustache? And then like on top of that, the dialogue for everything I saw Jim Carrey say in the trailer, the dialogue was just absolutely cringe. Like, it was not funny. It was just, it made me uncomfortable listening to it. And I can't imagine, like, with Jim Carrey, like, in the career that he's had, like, you have to think, like how did they how did they get him to be in this movie? Apparently he just really wanted to do it, or I guess, but it's just, this is not a good or a high point in Jim Carrey's career. I don't think he's going to look back on it and be like, wow, that was a great time in my career.
Well, if you want the Hollywood perspective, I think I said in the chat earlier this week, but I'll just say it again. It's from the Hollywood perspective, you paid a lot of money for Jim Carrey. So what you're going to do, you can't obstruct for promotional purposes. You can't obstruct the way he looks too much. So you have to set the movie up where he kind of looks like a normal guy from the start, but then he'll probably work his way to looking like Robotnik. Like we saw at the end of the trailer, like at the beginning of the trailer, he has like the regular mustache. And then like at the end, it like just completely grows out. And if he has the goggles, he's putting the goggles down. He looks like he's in a more animated area behind him. So how it's going to work, I already see how it's going to work. It's going to be regular Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
he'll eventually downgrade and go crazier and crazier trying to catch Sonic, and will deteriorate to something we're more familiar with, Dr. Robotnik. It's the same thing that happened with Super Mario Bros. Dennis Hopper doesn't look anything like Bowser King Koopa. And like by the end of the movie, they just turned him into a lizard, or like a giant, or I mean, like like a dinosaur / lizard type thing that didn't even look like King Koopa at all.
Yeah, but like the thing is,
trying to represent that.
If you're already establishing with the Sonic model that you created that you want an actual hedgehog, like you want it to look like if you actually had a more realistic looking Sonic in like a real world, you want it to mesh well. And to take, even if he is going to go through a character like arc where he just gets crazier and crazier, like to go to such extremes to make him look so ridiculous. It's so jarring, and maybe it's not even just the way he looks. It's the corny dialogue where he asks like a general a question, and then he's like, nobody cares, and it's just like it's just so cheesy and just like not funny, and just it just looks terrible to watch. So
I love Dude McGuy's theory because
yeah.
I think I might be on board with him. Tinfoil hat theory. The animators knew it was going to be an awful movie, so they made a horrible Sonic model to warn us all. Bless them.
Well,
To kind of put a spin on that theory, maybe they did intentionally make a bad Sonic model. They already have like the good Sonic model ready. Like it's like the traditional modern Sonic we know, just like maybe like a little more realistic fur. And like they're like, okay, let's make a promotional thing where we have a really bad Sonic to get a lot of attention for the movie, and then have people out of sympathy or like appreciation for the animators, we put the new Sonic in and be like, oh, I'll go see it since they worked so hard on it.
yeah.
I don't think they're that clever, but
If they're warning me not to watch this, then they're doing a very good job. I don't know. There's a part of me that like almost wants to go see it just because it looks like it's going to be so terrible that it'll be hilarious, and maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know, but I kind of feel bad that the director of this movie, like this is his first like foray into like full film directing, I guess, in a budget like this. So I feel like if this thing tanks, this could be very bad for his career. But
Jim
I don't
Carrey
know.
fine.
Jim Carrey will be
Jim
fine,
Carrey's been in
sure.
plenty of bad movies. It's never stopped him.
But I'm talking about the director of the movie. Like this is his first. I think he had like a short film before this, but this is his first credit, I guess, for a Hollywood movie. So, usually investors are not going to want to put money into a director that has a movie that lost money. That's not.
Look at the trailer though; it just seems so Hollywood controlled. Like it's something that's like out of the director's hands, like producers and maybe some
Well,
big
and
be like, it needs to be like this, it has to be like this, and it has to be like this.
yeah.
You can't. I have a feeling his creative vision is very limited by what the producers and Sega let him do.
And that's the thing that I've seen people bring up a lot that I think is probably the case is the fact that they have a new director, the fact that he doesn't really have a lot of experience behind him in a movie of this caliber, right? That he's probably just getting pushed around, which, is unfortunate too. So
Something that baffles me is
mhm.
that we learned through the 80s and 90s movies that like people the thing that turns people off the most is that when your characters don't look like or don't feel relatable to the video game title that they're from.
Yeah.
And we learned so many times through these video game movies that people want the original stuff. And to like the movie Warcraft, to its credit, it does everything it can to make it feel like the Azeroth that you know, or even the Assassin's Creed credit or Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. They use aesthetics and ways to make it feel like and look like it's the video game, which I can at least give them credit for. They're not good movies, but they're at least trying to be accurate. And then you have the Ratchet and Clank movie, which is straight up like a DreamWorks like animated movie, which
Mhm.
Sonic should have been in the first place. Honestly, this movie should have been like something you give like the DreamWorks or something like that. And it's like a Sonic animated world, like the world that Sonic lives in. And you can give the basic story. You have Sonic and friends to work with. So you have characters you can use. You have a world you can use. And it can be a basic Sonic has to go defeat Dr. Robotnik for such and such reason. And it could have been as simple as that, but they had to make like a Smurfs like movie or a movie like Hop, where it's like animated to live action. I
Well,
already thought we were
apparently,
kind of past this type of movie, but apparently not. And it doesn't seem like they've learned anything from the past, from
yeah.
the trailer alone.
Well, apparently the influence for this movie from what I've read, is Ted. So the movie with the teddy bear, like I can kind of get what they're going for, but I think the reason that worked was like it's a little bit easier to have a teddy bear because that's not actually supposed to be a live creature. That's just a physical item in your house. But also, like, I'm pretty sure that was a rated R movie. Like, you had a teddy bear that was like cursing and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, and I get that Sonic has a little more attitude than some of the other video game characters like Mario and stuff like that, and that's kind of why he was popular. But I don't think you can do the same type of thing with the Sonic character, and that's another reason why I don't think that's a very good inspiration to use, because you can't have Sonic like drinking beer and, and like cussing with the actor. I just don't think that's gonna work. And I didn't see anything going down that route in the trailer either. So I mean, you bring up a good point though. Like with other types of movies where they go this route, if they try to make something that actually resembles what people liked, it tends to do a little bit better. And I've seen some speculation that the Detective Pikachu movie, even though that's kind of goofy and they go for this more realistic look also, that people have speculated like this might actually do well because they didn't drastically change the Pikachu look or any of the other Pokemon. Like it's still like that's the iconic look, and they didn't change it besides put like a little hat on him and give it like a really goofy voice. But outside of that, like it's still that look. And so I think there's something to be said about that if they had just stayed with what people recognize, it might have not had such a backlash.
I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about it, and I'm going to go see the movie because I actually want to see it. It looks cool, and Ryan Reynolds looks real funny as Detective Pikachu. So, and it is nostalgic for someone who's a Gen 1 Pokemon player. The seeing all those come to life. That is how you do it. If you need to do it like a live action thing, but the thing is, it's its own unique type of story. It's not trying to um, I don't know the best way to put it, but man, just look at those models though. They legitimately look like what the Pokemon would look like if they were in a real world. It's like it's still Pikachu. They haven't
Mm.
changed the Pikachu model, the looks. What they did is they just made him look realistic. He has the fur, um, and the eyes and everything. It looks like if an actual Pikachu was right next to you. And like the same with like the Jigglypuff and the and the mime character and like any character or Pokemon you've seen, like especially the Charizard, it all looks really good, and it's so faithful to the original design that it makes them look appealing. Like they found that fine balance in um, keeping the original look while still making them look realistic enough to blend in with the movie without them looking like they stick out. It's a magnificent balance from that alone. I hope the movie is just as good as how it looks. So I'm gonna go see that when it comes out. I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. So, needless to say, the Sonic movie does not look very good. It's coming out on November 8th. I think it was Dude McGuy who suggested they should just delay the movie and fix it further. I think that's a great idea at this point. I just don't know how much it's going to cost versus how much they're projecting to make. But if they could do that, I think that'd be a good idea. But I'm not quite sure that with everything else I've seen with the movie, if that's all that needs to be done. I know Eric seems a little more hopeful with the Jim Carrey character arc than I do, but even just everything else I've seen in the movie is just so cringy to me. It just doesn't look like it's a very good movie. So,
Oh, it
um,
could be good. I just said it might be one of the more like
he
pop
might be the highlight of the movie.
the
Yeah,
highlight of the movie. Yeah, the highlight of a terrible movie. Yes, I
we might.
want to kind of see it just because I'm going to be so curious if it's that bad that like I've got to see this somehow. Like
I don't know. There's a part of me that just because I know it's going to be so terrible that I need to just go to get a movie ticket and go see it on the big screen and just Just get the experience fresh because I,
I mean, sorry to go on a small tangent here. What the hell was using Coolio's Gangster's Paradise? It's like, oh, Sonic is a '90s character. Let's pick any song from the '90s that was popular and put it on.
mm-hmm.
Let's spin the wheel. Boom, Gangster's Paradise. Absolutely nothing to do with the movie or how the character is, but putting it in.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that they're using music from the that time period goes to show that like this isn't necessarily geared for children. I mean, I'm sure obviously it's going to be a movie. If you have a kid, you can take a kid with, but it's geared towards appealing to the people that grew up like you and me with Sonic. And I've seen people use the excuse that, oh, because the dialogue is so cringy, like what do you expect? It's a kids movie. Like, then they wouldn't be using music from the 90s to try to like appeal to, adults. Like it didn't really walk that fine line. I think, there are movies like this that are made for kids and adults. I thought the original Shrek movie did a great job with that. Like you that's a movie you could take a 4-year-old to, and the 4-year-old would laugh his butt off, and you could laugh too. And there's multiple ways you could read jokes, and it was just really well done for everyone. This doesn't seem like this really walks that balance, at least from the trailer. So who knows?
Doing anything like the Smurfs movie, how it works is you draw the audience in via the parents. The parents know who the Smurfs are. They watched the Smurfs when they were kids. Their kids are not very aware of it, but it is like it's little animated people, doing funny stuff children will enjoy regardless. So the parents, out of nostalgia, when they take the children to go see the Smurfs movie. It's gonna be the same thing with Sonic. Like, you and I grew up in the '90s with Sonic, and I mean, I don't have a kid yet, but I'm 30, and a lot of people around my age do have children now. So they're like, I remember Sonic the Hedgehog when I was a kid. I loved playing that video game all the time. I want to go take my kid to go see. Oh my God, what awful creature is that?
Yeah, I don't want my kid to have nightmares. Like,
Mom, I want to go home. It's like, no, it's Sonic.
it's just like Sonic meets Chucky. Like, I don't know. So, anyways, I'm sure that we'll get more glimpses of this as it goes on. I'm curious to see if they're going to show us what the new model looks like before we get a new trailer with the new model. Because I gotta imagine like these people are working around the clock to try to like make updates to every single frame that he appears in. And I wonder if they're going to want to like put out an early draft of a new model before they make all those changes to make sure like they get something that people approve of, or if they're just like, you know what, we don't have enough time to really update it to the extent that people want. So we're just going to make an update, make a trailer. That trailer is going to come out a month before the movie comes out. And, that way we can just say, hey, we did what you wanted. Go see the movie. Sorry, we couldn't do more. We only had so much time. I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, I hope the best for them. They're trying their hardest to make the best out of a bad situation for them. So honestly, I hope they're successful. I still don't think it'll be a good movie, but I mean, it could be a hilariously bad movie. So hopefully,
it could be a cult classic. Yeah, I suspect that if they do delay it, that it's going to be a pretty substantial delay, because if the movie's coming out in early November 8th, I think, like that's a very kind of like off time for them to come out with a movie, because if you go any later than that, you're going to get in the Christmas season, and a Sonic the Hedgehog movie will just get wrecked if it comes out around Christmas, because there's so many
come out around Christmas, because you know why? Star Wars.
Yeah, well, they're not going to try to compete with that. They want to come out at a time where it's like there's nothing really else out at the time. There's only like B-rated B movies. They don't want to come out with Star Wars. I mean, come on. So, anyways, there's that topic. I'll be following this closely because I'm very enthusiastically interested in this movie. But I don't know.
People taking direct criticism. Our next
Yeah.
topic is Bloodstained.
Go ahead.
The Bloodstained is a game that is made by Koji Igarashi in this group. The guy who made the previous Castlevania games from Symphony of the Night all the way up to 2008's Order of Ecclesia. And he left the company a couple years ago since Konami is being Konami and not giving us anything. Koji decided to make his own studio and create his a new IP, but still retains all the elements of what people like about his Metroidvania type games. So he started a Kickstarter for Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and which was in 2015, which I put $60 for down in 2015. I am a backer for it. I originally backed the PS4 version, but then went to the Switch when they offered that version instead. But basically, everything about the game looked pretty good. And I played the demo, and it feels like a Castlevania Symphony of the Night type game, like up to the next stage up level. And the gameplay did feel good. And I actually enjoyed the boss fight at the end of the demo. It was like challenging. I had to learn how his move sets work and everything like that. Like just simply trying to plow through it was not working. So I enjoyed it on that end. And but before I get deeper into it, just to say the Kickstarter started in 2015 and we're up in 2019 now. It's just now getting released. But anyways, the main criticism that the game received was it didn't look good. The presentation wasn't that great, which I can agree.
Some of the animations were sloppy too. That was one of the big criticisms. People felt like it wasn't consistent across the board. Some of the animations were great. Some of them were not fantastic, I guess. So
yeah. So Koji Igarashi actually took that to heart. And he brought in Way Forward. Way Forward is known for the games like Shantae and the Mummy game that was actually pretty good. And I love the Shantae series. And then all of them always had great production and presentation type value. So they brought them in to help them make the game look better. And wow, I don't know if I can post like the video while I'm talking.
Yeah, we're watching it right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. But they made it look like from a low budget indie game to like a really damn fine looking indie game. Like the graphics went from subpar to really good. Like I don't know the best way to put it. Like they took the criticism to heart. Like the video even starts with Koji posting all these posts of people just criticizing the art direction. And like even putting in the really mean and nasty comments.
Yeah,
and
I
he's
that's
like
funny.
sipping his wine in his castle stage, and like he throws the bottle on the ground. And he's like, "I'll show them." And like all these comparison pictures and videos are just substantial looking, and I'm so excited for the game now. Which does now have a release date. It is June 18th for PS4, PC, Xbox One, and the Switch version for some reason is getting
a couple days
a week later.
Yeah, I thought that was strange.
Yeah, maybe something about that version. They just need like an extra week to get everything together, which is fine. I can wait an extra week. But this looks like everything I want in a Metroidvania. I mean, just the way he describes it, the castle is bigger than it's ever been before. And they're offering like modes and stuff to make the game last even longer. I mean, it just looks phenomenal now, and I can't wait to play it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a lot better, like you pointed out, and it's awesome that he took the criticism and they didn't try to make small little tweaks or they didn't bring promises like, okay, we'll release the game once people buy it, we'll go back in and kind of update some things. Like, no, he went and spent some money updating this, so like he really wants this to be a good game. So I'm all about that. I'm willing to support that all day. and yeah, it looks really, really good. You know, these types of games I do really appreciate because they tend to have a lot of RPG elements, which is, you know, something we talk a lot about here. And you know, they kind of give a similar feel of character progression, so it can be a really addicting, a lot of fun. So yeah, looks exciting.
I mean, I was just so excited when I saw that, and they put a release date next to it. Also, it's like any criticisms I had of the game are just I just feel like I just got slapped in the face. I wasn't really actively critical of it on the Bloodstained forums. I did have some comments here and there, but I wasn't really bashing the art direction because it honestly didn't bother me that much.
Yeah.
I mean, it still has some appeal there, like the characters look good, and
Well, we're kind of playing some older stuff right here on the screen, and just looking at it, like like it doesn't look that bad to me. I can see like what some people didn't like about it, but I mean the fact that it was a Kickstarter game, I mean I don't think it looks that bad, but it's one of those things where you don't really realize how good it could look until you go to the other end of the trailer and you start seeing like what it looks like after they updated it, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, this looks way better, you know? So
yeah, I mean, at this point, I could not ask more from them. They did their due diligence on that, and
do we have a price point on this yet, or are we still waiting for the price?
it's $40, I think.
$40?
Mhm.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's an indie title ultimately, even though it's
So
made by the creator of the Metroidvania, not creator like director of the Metroidvania series.
yeah. So I think that I would probably get this on the Switch, to be honest. I just feel like I would want it on the Switch. This looks like a good game to have in like a portable way to play, you know, at night in bed. Although I would be tempted to get it just to play it on my PS4 Pro, but I don't think that I'm going to get much of an advantage playing on a PS4 over the Switch. So
I got
think
no choice now. If I knew the Switch was going to be a week later than the other versions, I would have switched back to PS4. But oh well, I'm gonna have to wait an extra week, which is fine. I've been waiting 4 years for. I've been waiting almost 5 years for the game. No longer.
yeah, so
Already.
that's coming out. Y'all can look forward to that.
Yeah, please look forward to it. This is the first official Metroidvania. But the first game from Koji Igarashi with a Metroidvania style game since Order of Ecclesia in 2008. That's almost 10 years. Well, that is 10 years. I'm sorry. That's it'll be about hitting 11 to 12 years since he last released a game like that.
Yeah. So it's exciting for sure. Definitely want to support, especially him going forth and putting so much effort into fixing some of the major problems people had with the game. You know, that's the way you take advantage of, you know, the technology in 2019 with the ability to push something out, let people try it, and then come back and fix it instead of just being like, oh, well, we can now, because of the speed of internet, we can just charge, you know, for constant microtransactions and updates and all this other stuff. That's not what you use that technology for. You use it to let people try something out, you know, take some criticism, polish it up, and actually put out a quality product. So I definitely think that's a really cool story. Definitely want to support that. And $40 is not much at all to spend. So
yeah,
awesome.
Definitely. For how big the game is, I'm sure it's gonna be very much worth $40.
So definitely looking forward to that. Moving on though, we have some Dragon Age 4 stuff we want to get into. Dragon Age 4 / Anthem. And I think the best way to get into this, we were talking a little bit before the podcast, was just kind of go through this article that's on Games Radar. That way we all have the same information. And we might kind of talk about some of the issues Anthem has had as well. So that way we can kind of attack this from a macro sense. But the title of this article is Dragon Age 4 becomes BioWare's next big focus as Anthem loses its lead creators. And there's been a small update, which we'll get to right at the end of it. It's not very long. But it says the original story, Anthem, believe it or not, is meant to have a 10-year life cycle of post-launch content. But in light of the game's systematic problems, BioWare's lack of communication, and dwindling player base, the ambitious post-launch schedule is looking less and less likely. especially in light of recent news about the game's shifting development team. Recent weeks, 3 key members of Anthem's lead development team have departed from work on the project, including executive producer. Here's all these names. We got Mark Dara. I don't know these names, guys. Lead producer Michael Gamble and lead director Jonathan Warner, with only the latter intending to return to the game following a personal sabbatical. According to a recent tweet from Gamble, the reason for this behind-the-scenes reshuffle seems to be Dragon Age shaped, as BioWare places the majority of its focus on getting Dragon Age 4 out of the door following several reported reboots of the RPG sequel. When asked by a fan about who the Anthem community should turn to for questions and queries, Gamble confirmed that the game's lead producer, Ben Irving, and head of live service, Chad Robertson, are now the ones spearheading the game's post-launch cycle, and hopefully the game's post-launch cycle, spearheading the game's post-launch cycle, and hopefully steering it into a brighter future than its rocky launch period. And here's the last paragraph. Dragon Age 4, meanwhile, is reportedly another crack at a live service game from BioWare with online elements that would pivot the RPG series from its single-player roots. It's unlikely we'll be hearing anything soon from that title, so don't expect it to be popping up as one of the E3 2019 games later this June. Instead, the best we can hope for in the short term is that Anthem experiences some sort of miraculous resurgence and quality and vibrance. Stranger things have happened. Then there was a little update at the top. They said on Twitter, Anthem live service head Chad Robertson affirmed that he and Ben Irving, who are leading the game nowadays, are 100% committed to Anthem. And here's his full statement. We remain 100% committed to Anthem and look forward to showing players the new content we are working on. We want to make sure we aren't over-promising, so our updates on what's coming up in the game will be focused when we have things near completion. Along with Ben Irving and I, we've got a big team between Austin and Edmonton, focused and motivated for improving the game. We appreciate your support and for being on this journey with us. And we can get into in a bit some of the issues that Anthem has had, but to kind of cap this off, essentially, there was all this hope that they were going to fix all the issues that Anthem had. They promised a 10-year life cycle where they're going to be updating it constantly. But because Anthem has done so bad and it's had so many issues, they've kind of backtracked that a little bit. And then suddenly people find out that, a lot of the developers that were working on the supposed updates with Anthem are now working on supposedly Dragon Age 4. That makes them feel like, well, geez, these updates are definitely not coming. And some of the problems that it's had has been, the fact that the loading screens, there's just a lot of loading screens. I guess you can't edit your gear from the options menu. And I'm just reading this again from a Games Radar article. Here, I'll just pull this up that way you all can see it too. So they point out some of the issues is you can't reduce the number of loading screens. That needs to get fixed. You can't edit your gear from the options menu. You can't warp from the Forge to the Expeditions menu. I guess it's not possible. There's not that shortcut, or you can't travel to the Forge straight to the Expedition menu. You have to sit through 2 loading screens. Missions aren't marked with the player they're attached to, which is annoying. You can't get a waypoint in free roam. Your Javelin isn't great at collision control. Launch bay doesn't spawn your whole squad in the same place. Jesus. Make it clear what everything is, particularly when related to challenges. So there's a lot of communication problems. And there's some other problems too. I've seen a lot of stuff regarding it, like how specific mechanics of the game works. It's not very clear. And the story itself I've seen as a major criticism as well, that once you see one campaign or one story plot point, that kind of repeats it over and over again and doesn't get very exciting. So there's been a lot of players that are playing this game that really want a lot of these things addressed. And, you have a lot of these people that are supposed to be working on these updates moving on to Dragon Age 4, and it kind of makes you feel like Anthem's going to be forgotten. And then you find out that Anthem or Dragon Age 4 is most likely going to be a live service model similar to Anthem, which just makes people just at this point just super frustrated with BioWare from, the fact that we've had Mass Effect Andromeda, which has totally just been a flop at this point. They just dropped it and forgot about it, to, the promise of bigger and better things with Anthem. And, now it looks like they might be forgetting that as well and moving on to Dragon Age 4, which might be a similar type of game It's just like they can't get a clue. They're so out of touch is probably the biggest criticism. But I've been talking a lot. Eric, what do you think?
Man, what a shit show. For real, man. It's like Anthem, just from what I keep hearing, just keeps going under and under and under more. And like any response back from the developers, I think really actually just makes it worse for them because they start creating more expectations and then they're not meeting those expectations and people are getting fed up already and leaving after they've already done everything they want to do. It's just in such a terrible state, and it doesn't really come off like EA or Bio-Ware really care about the product anymore. It kind of comes off like they want to just like do what they have to do
Hmm.
with it, and then drop it off and go to and hope Dragon Age does better this time. But what they're saying, what I'm having a hard time grasping is that uh, they have these other games that have been coming out that are just so successful being a single player game. Like, what makes them think? Even Dragon Age Inquisition did well. What makes them think that Dragon Age 4 has to be a live service type of
Well,
game at this point?
I think what's going on, if you think about it, is like they keep making these games that are very expensive to create, and we ran into this with Mass Effect Andromeda, where it came out and it just wasn't very good. And it's just within like a month you were seeing that game being dropped in price to like $30, and then I think you can get it now probably used for like $10. It's very, very cheap, but they probably didn't make very much money on that, if at all. They might have lost money, and that probably just pressured them even more so to make more money with Anthem, probably get it out earlier than expected because they didn't make much money off Andromeda, which means they pushed it out before it was ready to come out. They put more like live service type elements into it to keep the money coming in, and then that's been a flop. So now they really need like a payday here from something. And you bring up a good point. Why don't they just go back to the old formula that works so well for them? But I think they just feel so much pressure to make that money and like milk something. So they're like, okay, Dragon Age 4, like let's do what we wanted Anthem to be. Let's do that for Dragon Age 4. Let's do it right. But they just don't realize, like, no, the way to do it right is to just make a single player game and make a great game and build faith back into your fans that you can actually do something that people like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think EA is going to learn on this. What's funny is they're still under that we need to make live service games thing when they're preaching right now that Star Wars Fallen Order is like it's single player, no microtransactions, no crappy DLC practices. This is going to be a single player game. It's like, what world do we live in now that we have to preach features that are not in the game? I mean, it was kind of sad and pathetic the way EA comes off with it. I hope the new Star Wars game is good, but they're clearly like slapping themselves in the face when they say this because EA is the one who is the most famous. I'm not saying they're the only ones who do it, but they're the most famous and the most notorious for
Gutting companies and just driving to the ground.
business practices and the microtransactions and doing all these exploitations. It's like EA's always in front of the line for this, and now they're making fun of themselves for it. It's, I mean,
Well, they're just out of touch because there was a developer that was recently quoted talking about Dragon Age 4, and they referred to it as Anthem with dragons. And it's like, are you like stuck in a bubble where you think like that's a good comparison? Like, are you just like, are you at work every day like high-fiving each other about Anthem? Like, that's not a good thing to say. And I don't know the context of that quote, but it just seems to me at the end of the day that people are just very out of touch. So
I think Dragon Age 4 is BioWare's last shot. I think if that game fails, which will, if it does, it will probably be because there was just too many cooks in the kitchen, like Anthem.
Mm,
Um, EA is probably gonna be like, "We're gonna shut you down." I know it's like 90% our fault, but we gotta shut you down. And on top of that, a lot of the people who made BioWare great are not even there anymore. It's really
yeah,
like just a shell of its former self. So
yeah,
I won't feel too sad if BioWare goes. Uh, I'll remember the great stuff they made, like Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, the earlier Dragon Age games, not Dragon Age 2, but I did enjoy it
hmm
also. But there are those games out there. They were,
yeah,
really, of course, the Mass Effect series.
yeah. I was gonna say like that's probably my favorite
Yeah,
from what I've
so
played. So
that's just I just see BioWare done after Dragon Age 4. Even if it is mildly successful, it's not going to be successful to the point that EA wants. And like I just said in the comments, EA is just waiting till BioWare just finishes digging themselves to the 6 foot of that hole, and then just gonna pop a cap in the back of their heads.
yeah, so unfortunately, I think that everyone already knows this, you know. So it's it's sad. It's you have to kind of close the doors on a company that everyone used to really like, and everyone wants them to return back to what they used to be. But like you pointed out, like most of the people that made that company great are not there. You've got EA kind of pulling the strings now, and it's just it's just circling the drain now. It's just who's going to pull flush. That's basically where we're at. So
Yeah, we're talking about this thing like we have a relative that's just about to die or something. It's like,
I have more confidence that the Final Fantasy VII remake will be a good game than Dragon Age 4 be a good game.
well, you have to really game for it to be good.
Yeah, well, I have more confidence. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty sad because I don't have much confidence that the Final Fantasy VII remake will be very good either. So, moving on though, final topic. We have a question from one of our listeners, watchers. I never know what to refer to people who are streaming live. So, but anyways, this is from Joker, who says that these days, if you have a choice between a Western RPG and a JRPG, which one will you go for with surety to get more enjoyment out of, and which one will you wait for a price drop? Eric, you want to take this first?
So he's basically asking, do I get more enjoyment out of WRPGs or JRPGs?
Well,
No?
he's saying these days, like currently, when you have a choice between a Western RPG and a JRPG, which one are you more likely to go to and have certainty that you'll get enjoyment out of? And which one are you kind of more likely to be like, I'll just wait till there's a price drop and pick it up?
It really depends. Like if I want an open world type game where I'm just like exploring, doing quests, immersing myself in the world, usually WRPGs excel in this manner more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I want something that's like a very like a more strict linear story type game where I don't really want to do that, I just want to relax and enjoy a story more. That's more where JRPGs come in. And I know that games nowadays kind of like want to mesh the two together, but I mean, there are going to be times where I want to play a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, and which has a lot of Western elements in it.
Yeah.
And I like doing some of like the checklist type things, exploring each part of the sector in the map and clearing out everything. That's a relaxing thing to do. And then there's going to be a time where I want to play. I need a JRPG to put on top of my head. Um,
Dragon Quest? I don't know.
Dragon Quest XI, perfect. I mean that's a pretty linear standard uh, JRPG fare type of game, world map, towns, dungeons, minimal exploration. And there are times I want to do that. So I can't really top one over the other. it's entirely like what type of genre I'm feeling into at the moment. If I'm
Sure.
looking for an open world game, I'm not gonna look on the Japan side because like the ones I have played, like Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I know is controversial to say, but I didn't like the game. um, another one being shoot, what's another one? Final Fantasy 15, of course.
Yeah.
um, that one did open world really poorly. I think this is something that Western RPGs still have a upper hand over JRPGs.
That wasn't really an open world. That was just a giant map.
Yeah,
Like, I think they forgot the world part, but yeah, good.
yeah. So it really depends on what I'm in the mood for, and both have their ups and downs. Like if I'm looking for like a really tight, compelling story, that's like a linear pace, like more akin to like a movie. Western RPGs may not do that. They go for a different type of thing, or a different way of pacing its story and
Hmm.
more integrating gameplay into it than JRPGs usually do.
Yeah.
So it depends. The short answer, it depends.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying, that it can be really affected by your mood. But I think for me, I tend to look more towards JRPGs than I do Western RPGs, just because a lot of times, like Western RPGs, when they come out, like they especially open world games, they tend to have a lot of bugs. Like they see, I hear a lot of stuff about them, like really like fixing them, and like there's not really a lot for me to like incentive for me to pick it up on day one because they still got to fix a bunch of stuff. And a lot of times too, like you don't really get a good vibe of how good a game is with a Western RPG, I've noticed, until like it's been out for like a month or two. So for example, with Red Dead Redemption 2, like that game, and like that's more kind of like action adventure style, but it's very open, right? And that's just an example. When that game came out, like it was getting like 10 out of 10s everywhere. Like people were just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever played. But after about a month and a half, people kind of brought that down a little bit. And they're like, well, like it's good, but it's a little cumbersome to play. And like only certain people really like it, and like usually you don't really find that with JRPGs. Like you hear like real quick, like whether or not it's a good game. Obviously you can still think of examples. Probably one that comes to mind is Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Like initially when that came out, I just heard nothing but rave reviews until later. But usually it's just like I don't know, like I'm a little apprehensive about picking up Western RPGs, and just until I hear more. And usually with that, like maybe a price drop. For example, Kingdom Come Deliverance. That's a game that I'm really, really interested in, and I've been watching a long time. And I keep looking on Steam for the sales, but it just hasn't gotten to the point where I want to pick the game up because I know that it's still struggling to fix some of the bugs, despite being a great game. And so like I'm not really wanting to spend $60 on a game that has features that they're still trying to fix. And I think the other part of it too is that like I'm really tend to lean more towards wanting to be immersed in a story. And sometimes when it's just, hey, pick your class, pick your sword, okay, now go out there, make your own way, that can be fun. But like I like to be engrossed into a story, and I just feel like generally speaking, that's more the JRPG route than Western RPGs. Obviously that's not the case with all Western RPGs. Some of them have phenomenal stories. But I mean, I guess it just depends. If there's certain ones like Horizon Zero Dawn, like that really was like the exception for me. Like I just loved that game to death. And we can get into debate whether it has enough RPG elements to be an RPG. It doesn't technically have the dice roll, I guess you could say. But when I see games like that, like that's kind of like the exception for me, because that was, to me, that was a phenomenal game. I just got so absorbed in the story and the world and the gameplay, and that's those are the moments where I'm like, man, like I could like really go in on these Western RPGs. But a lot of times it's just like I feel like I'm playing like a Skyrim knockoff, and it's just like I feel like I've already played this before. Like I'll play Fallout 4. I'm like, oh, I already played Fallout 3 in New Vegas. Like I like, and I just drop it after like an hour and a half because it's like I've already played this. So it's just not enough variety there for me, especially when like the story doesn't feel like it's the focus. And that's just my own personal interpretation. I see Joker saying in the chat, now remembering the question, the intent behind it was exactly which will you expect to give your more bang for the buck right at launch. These days, I think examples, Final Fantasy 15 versus Witcher 3, prompting you to choose one. I mean, like I would have to choose. That's not a very good example, Joker. I feel like I would choose Witcher 3. But
well, with that type of deal, let's go under the assumption I've never played either game before, and
okay.
it just came out the same day. It really depends on the title. I loved Witcher 1 and 2. I enjoyed playing those games, but I have a long history with Final Fantasy, and that will automatically prompt me to get that more. But if it was
That's
something
true.
like Witcher 3 versus, I don't know, insert,
Okay, let's say this. If it like to frame it correctly with what you're trying to say, because I feel like Final Fantasy 15, that's just tainting it because I've already played that game. So like, let's say it was Witcher 3, or well, I guess it doesn't work either because I played Witcher 3. But I was gonna say Witcher 3 or Final Fantasy 16, a game I know nothing about. Like I would pick up Final Fantasy 16, or like let's say Witcher 4. I don't know. Like that's okay. Witcher 4 or Final Fantasy 16. Like I think clearly I would go Final Fantasy 16 because like you said, like I know that series, but completely like unknown series. Like here's a random JRPG, here's a random Western RPG. Like, what do you think? That's hard. I don't know.
yeah, I would choose Final Fantasy 16 over Witcher 3. But guess what? I would choose a new Zelda console game over Final Fantasy 16. So it comes down to brand loyalty on that. If you're someone who's both into Western RPGs and JRPGs, I mean, you may have a favorite WRPG over some other JRPG. So again, it depends.
Yeah.
Uh, if it's like two new, completely different IPs, I'll just be checking the back of the cover and see which one looks more appealing. I mean, it's hard to say which one would I'd be more into.
Yeah, these days with newer games, meaning obviously just like I said, games that I have not played before and I don't really know anything about, I'm a very bad about waiting and not picking the game up on day one and just waiting for that initial review to come out, and just so I can start reading some of the reviews, because I just don't want to invest a lot of time or money into something that I like may not be very good. When I was a kid growing up and I could come home from school and play video games for 6 hours every day, like I just can't do that anymore. So I don't, for that time investment, I do want something that like is almost guaranteed. So if it's unknown, like I tend to, give it a week or two or maybe a month to really see, what the review scores are going to be and if it is worth playing. So, it's
Dude, that's a interesting comment you make. The audience for JRPGs is more critical of their games than the average player who plays most different type of games. I think that it's like that because while WRPGs are more open ended and you can kind of do what you want with them,
it's your own adventure. Yeah.
JRPG players kind of have like a static set of rules in their head, and I'm just as guilty of this. I'm not saying I'm above this mindset at all, but JRPG players kind of have like a strict set of rules in their head on what makes a good JRPG. Like you expect like an exciting, compelling battle system. You're expecting a like a world map type of deal, like a whole world to explore in a linear story. You're expecting compelling characters, good voice actors. I mean, these set not too strict, but a certain set of elements that famous JRPGs like Final Fantasy have set, and you kind of have those expectations at this point that they need to meet that quality as close as they can. So I think
Yeah.
JRPGs get a lot more flack, and that's kind of on the fault of them also because a lot of times it's like it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. That if you stray too far from the JRPG elements, that people will criticize you for that. But if you get too close to those elements, that you're like, oh, you're just doing what everyone else does. So JRPGs have a hard time kind of like meeting. They some are successful with that, some are not so much.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, and I think just like you said, Doom Guy brought up the same point, that people are more, the audiences for JRPGs tend to be a little more critical of their genre than other gamers who like to jump around. And I think I saw that mostly with Final Fantasy 15. I mean, some of the most positive comments I saw of that game came from people that don't normally play JRPGs, that tend to just, buy a game, they'll just play it. And if they got, 20 or 30 hours out of it, they're like, money well spent. And then they walk away and they buy something else and play it. They don't have all these expectations behind it. They're not going to like go have a panel and talk about, well, was this character development or was this moment actually earned? Or, was this character well developed? Or what about this plot point? What'd you think about this? It's just like, they spent money. If they had fun for a little bit, that's it. Because they just have a greater variety of games they play, or they don't really focus on too many JRPGs. And so I think that's a very fair point. So very, very good point.
Yeah. Western RPGs, could you really compare Mass Effect to Witcher 3 that much? There's some elements that make them similar, but they're two very, very different games.
Yeah. So but like, yeah.
It's kind of similar to like how like Western animation is and how Japanese animation is. Like Japanese animation, to an extent, has like a strict set of rules of their own to keep themselves appealing to their audience. If you notice that a lot of anime looks the same. I mean, there are definitely exceptions. I mean, most definitely there are exceptions. There are some Japanese animes that look way different than the others. Like Akira Toriyama, or a lot of shonen anime, or Studio Ghibli, stuff like that. But a lot of the lower end animes look all very the same because they have like a strict rules policy. Like the audience expects these type of things to be in the show, where like a Western animation show, it has kind of rules of their own, but they can really go far out there and do what they want, and they still will have a level of appeal.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just like a Japanese Eastern versus Western culture type of deal here, mindset, but both work. They ultimately both work in their own way. So it really comes down to, what do you feel like more playing that?
Yeah, I mean, and like, just to go off your point, I mean, it seems to me like Japanese RPGs tend to focus more on things such as presentation or having some flair or style to the way they present things, whereas Western RPGs tend to focus a lot more on immersion and making sure that you feel that you made the choice right, and that it's your own journey. So it does really come down to what you want, I guess, too. So I can't think of anything else to comment, but very good question, Joker. Really appreciate it. You got any other final points for Joker?
No.
All right.
Look forward to it. It's coming out in a couple of weeks.
Cool. All right, guys. So that's going to wrap up this episode. We do have some more questions in Discord to get to, but if you have any other questions you'd like to talk about, make sure you join our Discord server. There should be a link in the description you can click on, join our Discord server, ask questions, or just leave a comment in the YouTube channel, and we'll try to get to that next week. But thank you, everyone, for checking us out, and we will catch you all next week.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.